V.G.T 101 Video Game Terminology.
Well, finally got off me bum and figured it was about time to do another gaming terms list. Nothing mind-blowing, nothing amazing, but maybe you learned something, I don't know. That's up to debate if this channel is educational. By the way, I'm your host, Sensei Pong. Welcome to 10 more common gaming terms. Like and subscribe.
Number 1.
Nitro. Sure, let's start easy. This is simple enough, I suppose. Now, most of you old farts like me would know this one from childhood from either playing Ivan Stewart's Super Off-Road, or with a newer title like Hydro Thunder. Hold up. Hydro Thunder. 1999? Are you crazy? That's 17 years ago. Huh. I feel like maybe only 2 of you will get this shoehorn joke, but that's my fault for being over the age of 25. Either way, simply put, it's a boost in the form of a power-up, usually implemented with pickups or a stocked amount at the beginning of the race. In the Mario Kart franchise, the Nitro counterparts are the mushrooms that give you a short boost in speed. Perfect for those moments of the straightaways or trying to pass that spiky wall buffet Bowser. Why I'm using the original version for this example is beyond me, but you get the idea. My goodness, I'm terrible at this game. I remember being a heck of a lot better back in the day, so let's move on.
Number 2.
Turbo. That joke never gets old. It's turbo-tastic. Have some candy, because in most respects it holds the same meaning as Nitro. But for old farts like myself again, it refers to a special button on your controller, or in some random circles a weasel finger seizure-like technique of mashing the button really fast for those hardcore matches of Mario Party. That's not Mario Party, but you get the idea. But what's that button? Yeah, that thing. Well, back in the days when it really mattered, I suppose, a lot of games were or could be considered button mashers. Yo, it's 1942, Ace. Hit that trigger button as fast as you can. Yo, there's zombies. Hit that button to shoot an unlimited supply of lances from your magical Arthurian body. Mama, I'm playing them V.G.T games. Yeah, for these days, I suppose a turbo button's not a bad idea for some fighting games, even by today. But what the turbo button was, or in most cases, were a duplicate button of the standard, but instead of registering only one press for each time you press the button, it registered as a bunch of presses repeatedly without actually having to develop carpal tunnel by your mid-teens. In the 90s, both the Genesis and SNES had special Pro controllers with a turbo, but in all honesty, I'm good enough to where it doesn't exactly matter. It's all in the technique of not tensing up and aggravating your tendons. Stay loose. Either way, these buttons were helpful in some situations. Some controllers even had little switches to turn your turbo on and off. Good stuff, but not really a common thing anymore, if found at all. And yeah, another term, though outdated, was the turbo button on a computer. I believe they were normally only standard on PCs, not Macs, but what the turbo button on old PCs basically did was change the rate at which the processor ran at, either normal, full speed, or a reduced speed, as to not overheat or burn out your computer too quickly, thus prolonging the lifespan of your computer's guts. Either way, that's what turbo means, or a turbo button in most common definitions to gaming.
Number 3.
Clipping. Okay, finally, things them youngins can connect to. Clipping isn't a new term by any means, but definitely younger in contrast to Nitro and Turbo. Well, sort of, not really. It's definitely used more these days than the prior two, but what does it mean? And what do people mean when they say, yo, the clipping in Grand Theft Pika is ghastly? Well, it's pretty simple, sort of. Because really there's 2 different definitions in terms of computer graphics or just graphics in gaming. The layman definition when somebody starts complaining about the clipping in a video game is negative. It usually refers to the object in a video game, be it inanimate or a character, begins to phase, or in this scenario, clip through another object. This can either be other players or the play world itself. Either way, that's the common slang of clipping for the consumer base. Clipping under this definition was very common in the earlier days of the PS1, N64, Xbox, etc. But as graphics got better and processors, RAM, graphic cards, etc. were pushed harder, and polygon artistry became more sophisticated, efficiently cutting corners in graphics without the player noticing became crucial for sustaining good frame rates and well-optimized games. Doesn't mean it's still not a thing. If anything, it's still everywhere. And I can only assume it's because games are far more sophisticated in their graphics, making it harder to stop clipping. Which brings us to the actual program and game developer term, or at least from what I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm no graphical artist, just a sensei of Pong after all. Simplest way of putting it is the region of a rendered object or area that has been quote-unquote clipped to ease the work of whatever computer is running the program's graphics. For moving objects like a character or NPC, it's got to be larger than what is visible, so no holes are present. I feel like I'm getting this wrong, so don't hold me to it, but either way, in common chitter-chatter of gamers, clipping is a negative feature to a game's graphics. As said before, when things pass through other things as if they're just holograms. which I suppose you can argue that they are in a virtual plane. But this isn't a philosophical video. It won't delve into that question anytime soon. It can break immersion of an immersive game for most, and many people complain. Personally, I can care less unless it's horrendous. Graphics are hard, man. I prefer to complain about the technical and content faults of a game before its graphical errors. This video has been sponsored by No Man's Sky, because remember, less is more.
Number 4.
A.P.M, an acronym that stands for actions per minute. Okay, I should really state that this isn't a common gaming term, but is common enough in certain rings that it's notable. I know the title of this video is a lie. It should really be 10 random gaming terms, not common. But whatever, what's A.P.M and why is it a thing with some niches? Well, in most cases, if a gamer or gaming enthusiast refers to an A.P.M, they're referring to the actions per minute of a professional gamer. Because how many actions can a professionally competitive gamer or esport player register actions in 1 minute? These sort of stats are obviously important to know for the competitive scene, as the batting average for a batter in baseball is. How many successful hits has Mike Trout had in one season? Or, fantasy football, was my random picks for QB really that great? Let's look at the stats. Let's look at the history. I wonder if there's a such thing as fantasy StarCraft, virtually simulating a virtually simulated game. Huh. Fantasy esports is a thing. Well, I'm sure it's more engaging than fantasy golf, which is also a thing. But if you're into it and you like it, that's great. Different strokes for different blokes, I suppose. Then again, Football Manager is one of the highest selling games on Steam, so I'm not surprised. Stat management is surprisingly fun, but yar, I digress. A.P.M for esports obviously only really applies to the types of competitive games where it's truly applicable. For example, many RTS or MOBA Dota-like games. In StarCraft 2, a good number of the top-tier players have A.P.Ms over 300, which rounds out to be about 5 to 10 actions per second, which if you've ever played any RTS games is carpal tunnel inducing and insane really. I think my personal stats come closer to about 300 plus APH, which is 300 actions per hour, which comes out to 5 to 10 actions per minute, which is sad. So I'll stretch the truth and say my A.P.M is more like 50, but that's a lie. I'm such a naughty boy. Let's carry on.
Number 5.
Hot seat. Oh yeah, hot seats. Before I make a joke about massage chairs or using a toilet after another person has, what a hot seat refers to is the player at hand or the type of multiplayer. Normally a feature of multiplayer for older games where only one person was able to play at one time. Hot seat multiplayer is basically where 2 or more people take turns playing one game. So for example, with some pinball games, Pac-Man or Donkey Kong, there was hot seat multiplayer. Player 1 plays until they lose a life, then player 2 has a go. The original Super Mario Bros. Had hot seat multiplayer, and many other games still have hot seat multiplayer. Kinda like Monopoly, if you ever played that on PC. Though still not very prevalent these days, that's what hot seat multiplayer is. And just like the common term for the hot seat is, the peep on the hot seat can also just mean whoever's up to play. Yo, they're in the hot seat. Yo, you in the hot seat. I like them, look at them hot seats. Ew. Not to be confused with a hot foot prank, which is essentially setting a person's shoe or shoelace on fire. Well, this one derailed. Moving on.
Number 6.
Mercy, or mercy play, mercy move, or I'm just such a nice guy that I didn't beat you to a pulp, and now you're able to play just a little bit longer. This one's pretty simple, though I'm not too sure if I've actually heard it being used as of recent, like past 5 or 10, maybe 15 years recent. Or it's just being used as a point of sarcastic sting, because some gamers these days are salter than Popeye's Wall Buffett. One guy is leagues ahead in terms of ability, while the other may just be a casual player. They're both friends and have spent quarters in playing a match of Tekken against each other. Player A, who's better, lets player B win the second match, as to having an extra amount of play for forcing the match into a third round.
Number 7.
UI, an acronym for user interface. Pretty self-explanatory mostly. Some games have good ones, some games don't. Some programs or operating systems have great ones, while others can be a pain, while others, well, are so easy that a child can use it, except when you're trying to manually fix something or customize something, making a pain in the putty dropper to do anything outside of contacting the freaking Geek Squad or a kiosk, which will probably cost more than it should in time, gas, or actual money. PCs and Linux for life, man. So what is it? I'm not explaining anything. The user interface is basically the actual space and layout of a program, operating system, or menu, etc. In either a game, program, whatever. A bad user interface is confusing and or hard to use, poorly optimized, lacking synergy, disorganized, cluttered. Maybe they're simply ugly to look at, making it a pain to try to even fiddle with anything. A good UI can be easily navigated, pretty to look at, organized, self-explanatory, maybe fun to use. Some gaming companies that tend to do a decent to great job with their UI in games that can be generally agreed upon could be Blizzard, Nintendo usually, and Rockstar Games usually. A good example of games where bad UI can be generally agreed to could be Assassin's Creed 3, some sports games, my desktop, hypothetically if it were a game. Look at that mess. There's folders within folders within folders within folders within folders. And only I know how to navigate that limbo of information. I purposely chose that desktop pattern with minimal clutter to not confuse my personal clutter.
Number 8.
Camping. When people use logical and realistic combat techniques to ambush another player in combat-orientated games. I mean, when a player normally used in first-person shooters like Call of Duty or Battlefield, play unfair and sit and wait in a popular spot to gank somebody with a grenade launcher. Just kidding. Do I find campers annoying? Yes. Do I partake in camping myself sometimes? Yes. Do I enjoy camping in real life? Mostly. But I have no real opinion on the matter, it's just a matter of gameplay. But yes, camping or a camper in a game is a player that stays in one spot, waiting for another player to knock them out. Argue that it's a defensive strategy. Argue that it's cowardly. I don't care. I only like camping when I'm doing it myself and it doesn't shoot me in the foot when other players realize what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm a D-bag player. If I get a decent KD out of it or helps my team in the long haul, it's called being a team player. I can tell myself this all I want and it may or may not be true. A good example of when the term camping can be used could be,
You have a lot of words for that. What? What'd you say, man? I says, watch out, there's a dude roasting marshmallows camping on the second floor. Get a better mic, bro. You sound like that troll Sensei Pong.
KS, an acronym for Kill Steal. Okay, so this is what happens when some annoying second-rate fast reflex numbnut steals your kill you've been working at. Pretty straightforward again, but if somebody complains that another player KS'd them, it means they stole their thunder in reward for a kill of some kind. And this can happen in MOBAs, MMORPGs, first-person shooters, or any game that can allow a person to run in and take your bonuses from killing an enemy or opposing player. It's usually good etiquette to not KS when you can, cause it can get other players upset with you very quickly. Case in point,
Get off my back, you mama's food truck, 005926617.
And number 10.
turtling. Now, I'm not too sure if this is used a whole bunch, but I'm throwing it in anyways. It's similar to tanking and for some situations holds the same definition. But as with tanking is normally used with a single character archetype for some games, turtling is more of a strategy in itself. It's a defensive strategy versus an offensive. The player is, in a sense, turtling up in their shell, taking blows, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike a winning play or move. This can be used in many RTS games, maybe some MOBAs, strategy games, fighting games with blocks, or wherever a defensive strategy can be utilized. You may turtle because it makes sense for the situation. I tend to start turtling because I know I'm going to lose and want to prolong the game as long as possible, hoping my opponent tires out, leaves the game, or runs out of resources. Who knows what goes on in my head when I'm planning a turtling situation? I just play. And you should too, that's why this video is sponsored by Charmin Ultra. Less is more, except for those times when I eat at Taco Bell. Anywho, hope you enjoyed these brief explanations to some more gaming terms. Like and subscribe if you want, it probably helps the channel grow in some way or the other. I suppose you can ding that bell button also if you want some more of my random content when it comes around. That's a thing, right? All the kids are doing it? Sounds glitchy. But as always, if you disagree with any of my explanations or analyses, leave a comment down below so we can destroy each other in a flame war. Thanks for watching. Sensei Pong signing out. As the battering as the battering average for an athlete like Tiger Woods. That's a terrible joke.